Situations that you have where you found yourself thinking to yourself, there's no way in California or New Mexico I could have been prepared for this in my HR training?
Everything. I mean, there was just, some of it's universal. Some of it's universal. Some of the other things that, when you take a job in the U.S., you tend to take it for long term. With these jobs, they tend to be short term. So you're never really prepared for the continual testing that happens. That national staff will test you on your knowledge of what's really happening. And it's normal because people are just want to take advantage of what the situation might be, or maybe there's a policy that they're not happy with or that has been interpreted one way and they're hoping to have it interpreted another way. So when you first arrive, you learn quickly, and you're told before you even arrive, do not make any changes when you first arrive. Don't make any changes. Just don't. And that's a really hard thing to do in your first job, because you want to prove yourself, you want to get there, you want to show them that you know what you're doing and you can do it. And the hardest thing in the world is to sit back and not make any changes. But then after a while you see what's happening, because you see someone come and ask you for something. And I've learned that rather than answer immediately, my answer is always, let me find out and I'll get back to you. Because there's always a story. And I had the good fortune to work with someone in Homa Bay who was a phenomenal field coordinator, who had a lot of history, who I could go to her and say, this sounds funny. The guard is asking for this, or the driver has asked for this. She's like, oh my God, again? Every time there's someone new in the position, they start over with this. And it's those little things that make the big difference with the staff, because they need to see that you're going to be consistent with policies that are already in place. And the natural inclination is you want to make friends, you want people to be happy, you want people to like you. This is normal. But the hardest part is to not change anything, to not have an opinion, to do the investigation. So it was always frustrating because I could never just do anything. I had to go find out the backstory. Every single situation. Even in a situation where it seemed like the answer would be a no-brainer yes, you would discover. And I had made that mistake, where I would make a decision and say, okay, yes, and then have to change it later, which is the hardest thing in the world. Mm. Go back to the person and say, I was wrong. This is not how it is. This is the story. I see that you wanted it to be your way. It made sense for your way. But no, I have to change the decision. So it was always easier in the long run to take what felt like the long way to find the backstory. What's the backstory behind this? Because there's always a story. There's always a story behind it. Was it different working with the nationals at Doctors Without Borders than working with the staff in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Did you think that people are fundamentally the same, or did you think that cultures really do make people fundamentally different? Yes, to both. On some levels, they're very much the same. But in some levels, they're very different, and you're going to ask for specifics. And culturally, what was really big difference in Kenya is that we would pray before meetings. So we had to have prayers before meetings, and there was always that acknowledgement and learning about the different. You always had a moderator for every meeting, kind of like a facilitator, but they always had a moderator and a facilitator, those kinds of differences. The staff really wanted things to be followed a certain way during meetings, protocols to be observed in Kenya. In Albuquerque, not so much, although I guess we have protocols to observe. It just doesn't feel like them. We don't pray before meetings. The similarities between staff is everybody has their unique needs, you know. Everybody's got a home life, families that they have to take care of, cars that break down, alarm clocks that don't work, behavioral issues that creep in. Could be substance abuse issues that impact their work that have to be dealt with. There's really not a whole lot of difference. Staff always feel like they're being underpaid and never being paid enough. And that's universal. It's unfortunate, but it's universal. Especially in the nonprofit world or the humanitarian world. The staff always feel like they're being underpaid. So there's that. The differences are in how you deal with it. In Kenya, there was a lot more openness to, I mean, God entered most discussions. The concept of God and faith entered a lot of discussions. So depending on where you are, you just go with it. You just go with that. There's a lot more in the U.S. sensitivity towards gender issues, but that's discussed openly in Kenya. Well, in Kenya specifically, in Homa Bay, polygamy was practiced. So dealing with guards and drivers and staff members who had 2, 3, 4 wives, because it was practiced.
How does that show up in the HR day?
Well, now your dependent list has just grown exponentially. You have more people to worry about and pay for on the health plan. There's a huge cost to that because there is health insurance. There are policies. Which wife is it going to be? Because you can pick one wife to be on the health plan, but then another wife gets sick and has a baby, so you still have to take care of the child of the second wife who's pregnant. I mean, these are the issues and the lines, and where's that fuzzy line? So yeah, that's definitely not on the PHR test, is how to deal with people who have multiple wives. You don't deal with that.
At least all at once.
Yeah. You don't. That's not on the test.
And there's also the matter of the invisible power structure. Who's really the leader? Talk to that.
Well, and I think this is universal across lines. I think there are supervisors and there are managers designated as leaders, but that doesn't mean they're the leader. And that doesn't mean that they're the person you talk to when you're going to implement a change. And you learn very quickly that you don't just announce a change in Kenya and expect it to go over and be accepted. You can do that in the U.S., it seems. You announce, okay, we're going to make a change to our policy. This is the new change. There you go. You're done. It's done.
Because I would think that where there's the hidden leader, there's also the hidden lack of power that the official leader might not have. So you might think that you've got that clout because of your title.
But you don't.
But you don't.
You don't. You do not have it at all. There is culturally, there's always the underneath going on. There's always the discussions and the grassroots, for lack of a better word, happening. Everyone's talking, the nurses are talking, the clinical officers are talking, the guards, the drivers, everybody's talking about a decision that's been made, and then all of a sudden it comes back and they just flat out don't do it. They just don't do it. And it's not because, it's because of how it was done. So you learn. You don't make a change unless you're sure to have identified who do I need to talk to over here to have that conversation. Hey, listen, George, we're thinking about this.
And is George even related to the outcome of the decision?
Yeah.
So he does have a stake.
Yes, he's an employee. He's got a stake. We're going to change the driver schedules. We're going to, instead of the drivers managing their own vehicle, we're going to have them start rotating vehicles. Well, you don't just do that. you first talk to the driver that you have a connection with. Maybe it's a driver that I know, a driver that I've, for whatever reason, Walter and I, we laugh, we giggle, we have a good time, we, can have those small conversations. Walter, what do you think about this? What do you think about this idea if we were to do this? What would the upside be, the downside be? What do you think the other drivers are going to say? What would be the best way to present it to them? Oh, I don't know. You might want to talk to Ferdy about that, because Ferdy, and he'll direct you in the way that you need to go. So then you go talk to Ferdy. Well, by now, all the drivers know that you're thinking of doing something. But you've started a conversation. You've started that grassroots, what do you think? What's your opinion? And it takes a long time. It takes a long time. And for someone who's not patient, it's a real exercise to do that, because you just want
Especially something like a driver's schedule, it should be done. Presto, change, or done.
Yeah, it's done.
You're the boss, it's done.
That's right. We're the boss, not you. But if they don't buy into it or understand or have that ability to converse about it first, and they're just far more community-minded about it, or for lack of a better word, they love to talk about it. For days. Days. Talk about it. How it's going to impact them, what the ripples are. Well, if you make this decision, did you think about this? Or how is that going to happen? Or what's going to happen here? Or where is that going to go? And it's just like throwing a rock in the lake. You got to, where are all the ripples going to go? How much is this going to impact?
So when they finally have buy-in, how do you hear about the buy-in? Is one person designated buy-in announcer, or does it suddenly just start happening and you don't even know it?
Well, yeah, there's it just happens. And the decision is going to be made anyway. Sometimes it's a fact. This is the decision that will be made. This is what's going to happen. What do we need to do to make it happen? And here's why it needs to. And let me tell you informally, off the record.
Just between you and me?
Just between you and I. And it's never the case. It's never just between you and I. Let me tell you why. Because the word will get out. They'll talk about it. There is no between you and I.
So you have to use that.
You use it.
Yeah.
You use it. And I think you need to do that at some level here in the U.S. I don't think it's any different. I think employees want to know what's going on. Employees want to have a say. They want to be able to do it. And I think in the end they will live with the decision. But it becomes a matter of, do I want to spend the time up front in managing it? Or do I want to spend doing damage control? Where do I want to spend the time? On the damage control side or on the preparation side?
And that's a no-brainer.
Right. And it's just more fun to do it on the front side. There's more laughter involved on the front side than on the back side. You get to giggle more.
What was it like working with the healthcare staff, the actual medical professionals? Were you able to work with them in a mutually respectful way?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's still the HR issues with the medical staff. You still have to deal with sick leave issues and showing up to work on time issues and dealing with, because of the scale of the operations in a third world country like that, or like we did in Homa Bay, the scale of operations is so huge and it's so task oriented that sometimes an employee is going to get bored, because your job is to dispense pills. This is what they do all day. Dispense pills. And because of the process called task shifting, because there's not enough medical doctors in Homa Bay, you have to find ways to shift many of the tasks that a doctor would do to a clinical officer, which is just below a doctor, a nurse's aide, or a counselor. Mm-hmm. And you look for ways to shift some of those tasks to free up the doctors to do doctoring, to work with that. So sometimes employees distributing pills for 10 years, that becomes boring. So you have to look for ways to maybe move them around to other places, okay, so you're going to distribute pills for 3 months, and then you're going to do weights for 3 months, and then you're going to do something else for 3 months. Then you've got a mixed bowl of soup with that one too, because I don't want to change, or I want to change more often, and you want to balance how do you manage the rosters, and where do people go, and what do they do, and making sure they have the skill set to do it, and also training them, and why change is good, why rotation in skill sets is good. And that's difficult. Some people don't want to change. What else is new?